Katzcradul here. I am excited to make this recipe for you today. I have not seen any other preppers doing it, and what I like about it is that it utilizes food storage with making a yeast bread without having to wait a long time for it to rise and knead down and then preheat an oven and all that kind of thing. You can actually make it very quickly, and you can do it on a stovetop or over a campfire. So I hope you like it, and I hope that you're going to try it. Here's what we're going to start with. We have a saucepan, a small pot on the stove, and to that I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of butter. Don't worry too much about the ingredients at this point because I'm going to list the recipe for you below in the comment section. To that I'm going to add 1 cup of milk, I'm using whole milk today, but it doesn't really matter very much. You certainly can use powdered milk that's been reconstituted, and 3 tablespoons of honey. I'm pretty familiar what measurements look like, so I don't always measure. You're going to whisk that together until the butter completely melts, and then you're going to take it off of the heat and let it cool until it's lukewarm. In the bowl in the back, I have a cup of warm water. It should be very warm to the touch, but you should still be able to keep your finger in it for a few seconds without it burning. And the recipe calls for a package of dry yeast. Well, a package of yeast is nothing more than 2 1/4 teaspoons of powdered yeast. So that's what I use. I don't buy the little packages. They're too expensive. And what you do is you stir that with a fork, and you let it sit for 10 minutes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to combine these two, and then you're going to begin adding your flour. And when I get to that point, I'll come back and show you what I'm doing. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes. I had my big bread bowl out thinking I was going to use it, but I think I'm going to pull that away because I think I can just mix everything in my pot. I'm going to show you a couple of things before we get to the actual mixing. A couple of months ago, I went to one of those fancy home party show kind of things where all the stuff they sell is expensive, and I saw for sale this set of cookie cutters, biscuit cutters, whatever. There was actually a larger one in there. I'm holding it in the front. And I have always been very frugal and very thrifty, and I've used tomato sauce cans to cut biscuits, and I have an old plastic Tupperware biscuit cutter that I've had for years. But I saw these and decided I was going to buy them, that I wanted them. I've wanted them for a long time, and I just went ahead and did it. And this is the perfect cutter for what we're doing today. So you don't have to have it. You can cut them by hand. There's lots of other options, but this is what I'm going to be using today. I also have on the far side of the saucepan a jelly roll pan, a lot of people call it a cookie sheet, that I have put a piece of aluminum foil shiny side down on, and then I have just spread a little cornmeal on it. You don't have to have the foil. You don't even have to have the cookie sheet. You can use any kind of sheet you want, but you do need the cornmeal because you want to keep the English muffins up off of the surface of whatever you set them on. So here we go. You can see that the yeast has done exactly what it was supposed to do. It's nice and frothy looking. I have proved that the yeast is good. The butter and honey and milk is lukewarm. So now I'm going to combine these two. I'm going to scrape all that good yeast out of there. There we go. And then I'm just going to stir to combine these. Excellent. I'm going to begin adding flour, and I'm going to start with probably, maybe 2 1/2 cups. Yeah, let's see how that goes. I'm going to stir these together still very liquid. I'm just trying to incorporate some of that flour in there and get it smooth. Okay, now I'm going to change tools, getting rid of the whisk. Actually, I need a dishcloth here. Okay, I'm getting rid of the whisk, and I'm going to go to this, which is just a wooden spoon, and I'm going to begin incorporating more flour, about a cup at a time. Stirring it together. It's still kind of loose. Maybe I should have gone to my big bowl. I don't know. And it'll get stiffer. You can see it's getting, as you add the flour, it will get stiffer, of course. Okay, go for another 3/4 of a cup. And I'm going to add flour until it gets where it's uncomfortable for me to stir. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is the best flat surface in my kitchen because I have tile on my countertops that have grout in between, and I never like to knead bread on that because unless my grout is impeccably clean, which it almost never is, you just can't keep it that way, I don't want my bread dough as I need it to pick up any germs or bacteria out from that grout. So I have a flat surface stove, which is perfect for kneading, so that's where I'm going to put a little flour on here, and then I'm going to turn my dough on it, and I'll show you when I get ready to knead it. Alright, I'm back and ready to knead. I'm just going to scrape off my wooden spoon with a knife here, and I can't believe you let me forget to add the salt, but it's not too late. I'm glad I didn't. About a teaspoon of salt goes in, so now I'm going to sprinkle it over the top like that. My dough is still wet enough that I'm probably not going to have an issue. And so I'm going to begin kneading my dough. I start off pretty gently. You like to have impeccably clean hands to do this. What you're doing is what kneading does is several things. It makes sure that all your ingredients are incorporated, especially if you're adding salt at the last minute like I just did. The other thing, you're making sure that everything is completely distributed throughout the dough, but the main purpose is to, and just keep adding flour as you need it. If it starts to stick to your hands, just wipe the surface of the dough with flour. But you're developing the gluten, and that's important in a yeast bread because you want it to have nice structure. And so I just keep gathering flour in. And you can see how I turn. This is not the greatest day for me to be making a kneaded bread because I'm having a little bit of an allergy issue today. And in my opinion, if you knead bread properly, it's a workout, and you should feel a little winded after doing it. I really work my dough pretty well. How do you know when you've done it enough? Well, you don't want to incorporate so much flour that your dough becomes totally dry to the touch. It still needs to feel somewhat supple, and if you add too much flour, then it's not supple anymore. It just becomes a stiff mass. So at the end, I'm not dumping on half a cup of flour. I am just merely sprinkling so that I don't get past that point of no return where then it just becomes too too stiff and dry to be good. So I gather up the flour on my surface, and I'm just about there. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Just a slight bit tacky, you know, because it'll stick to this portion of your palm if you're doing it, if you're kneading correctly. And I do put all my upper body strength pressing with the palm, the heel of my palm. Just one more little dab of flour. Now, gluten is somewhat like a strand of an elastic rubber band. And the closer to the time of it being developed, like right now, it has a lot of strength. And so if I were to try to roll this out right now, I would meet with some resistance from the gluten. So I don't want to try to roll it out right now. What I want to do is give the gluten a minute to rest and relax, and to say, okay, I'm not going to mess with you anymore. I'm just going to let you be for a minute. So I just pull it together so I have a smooth top. I dust it with just a touch of flour. I lay it on a floured surface, and then I cover it with a clean, thin, dry dish towel. And I'm going to let that rest about 5 minutes, and then it will yield to my touch, and I'll be able to roll it out and cut my English muffins. So I'll be back with you in just a little bit. All right, I'm back. It's been about 10 minutes, and what I'm going to do at this point is put just a little bit of flour on top of my dough before I touch it, because I don't want anything to stick. It shouldn't. I'm going to rub it just like that, and put a little flour on my rolling pin. Now, you don't have to have a rolling pin to do this. You can push it out by hand. So I'm going to lift it up gently. Oh yeah, it feels really nice. And what you do when you're rolling something is you start at the center and you roll out. Yeah, it's rested enough. It's yielding. That's good. Then I'm going to come out this way. See how nicely it's pushing out? If I would have tried to do that right after I kneaded it, this would not be happening. It would really be resisting. And it would, after I rolled it out, it would be springing back a lot more. So you come to the center and you roll out. You want to get it about a 1/2 inch thick. And it doesn't really matter because you're going to be cutting circles. It doesn't really matter what shape it takes. If you use a 3.5 inch cutter, you ought to get about 18 muffins out of it. I'm using a 4 inch, so I won't get quite that many. And I'm just trying to gauge if it's about a 1/2 inch, and it is. That feels pretty good to me. Just kind of feel for thick spots. If you feel a thick spot, just press it out. Okay, I like the way that feels and looks. Here's a nice big air bubble right here. I love that because I like the big bubbles in my English muffin. Now, you want to press down, but preferably not twist very much. Okay? This is how it's going to look. There's one English muffin. I'm going to set it right here on the cookie sheet. Press down. Press down. And I'm going to just do that throughout the whole dough, and I'm going to put my English muffins over here. And when I get them over here, I'm going to dust them lightly with cornmeal on the top. I'm going to cover again with that same dry, light cloth, and I'm going to let them rise about 35 minutes. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm left with a few scraps after cutting my English muffins. So I'm gently just pushing my scraps together and just gently trying to gather the dough together. Now these will not be the pretty ones, but I don't care. I don't want to overwork these at this point because I don't want to make these tough. I want them to be tender. So I'm going to get a couple more out of it. Set them on my sheet. Oh, these are going to be a little thick. That's all right. These are a little thicker. And I can do one more. There we go. You can see the three that were reformed. They're not as pretty. Doesn't matter. I'll eat those. So I ended up at 12. I'm going to dust them with cornmeal, cover them, and I'll be back in 35 minutes. All right, we're now down to the cooking step. I have a flat griddle pan that's actually covering 2 burners. There's a little smoke coming off of it because Prepper A and Paladin Prepper use this outside to cook on over campfire sometime. There's probably a little something on the bottom. And I've got a big skillet over here so that I can hurry it up and cook as many as I can at one time. Now, here's how they've risen, just slightly. You see they have the cornmeal on the top. And I'm going to gently lift them up, removing some of that cornmeal, and I'm going to place them on the griddle. If somebody can tell me what my computer is doing in there, the DVD door keeps opening and closing spontaneously. It's like we're possessed or something. But if you can hear that in the background, that's what's happening. Okay. Here we go. I may be able to get 4 on this griddle at one time. Okay. My pans are about at 300 degrees, which is about where you want them. They need to cook about 10 minutes on each side, but you can keep checking that. I'm going to load this pan up as well. They don't need much room because they're not going to get really substantially any bigger. I'd love to be able to get all these on at one time. There's one of the little ugly ones that was done last. Oh, there's a big brother. That one may take longer than 10 minutes. Okay, if I can squeeze one more on here, it would be awesome. Here we go. I think I can get one more on. And here's the little sad piece of dough that was left. I never waste anything, so it gets cooked too. This cornmeal is perfectly good to use. I can put it right back in my cornmeal container because it wasn't in contact with anything except that dough, and the dough was not wet. So when I turn these, I'll come back and show you what they look like when they've turned. All right, they're done, and if that's not a thing of beauty, I don't know what is. I have purchased English muffins my whole life. I love them, but the really good ones, like Bay's English muffins, they're just out of my price range now. And there's no reason I can't make them at home, and there's no reason you can't either. Here's all the pretty ones. Here are the other 3 that I did at the end. They're kind of not as attractive because you can see where I pushed the dough together, but that's okay. They're still delicious. These are beautiful, delicious fork split English muffins, and I'll show you how to do that in just a little while. I'm going to go pick Prepper A up at school, and I'll let her do a little taste test for you. You will notice a little strange piece that was left at the very end is gone, so I don't really need her to do a taste test because I tasted that little odd end like I always do, the little tiny piece of dough that's left over after you cut the last English muffin, and I'll tell you, they are delicious. This is so easy to do. You don't need an oven. You can do it right on the heat. In fact, you have to do it that way. They are delicious. So I'll be back in just a minute with Pepper and let her tell you what she thinks. All right, if you've only ever used a pre-split English muffin, let me show you how this works. Just try to find the middle of the English muffin, and you poke your fork in halfway and pull it out, and you just go around. This is what you call a fork split English muffin, and you want to do this rather than slicing it with a knife, because a knife would make it very smooth on the inside, and what you're trying to do is create a rough texture by opening it this way so that you have nice little crags and crannies and hills and valleys to hold your butter and your jam and whatever. And that's how it looks. Just like that. Fork split English muffin. That's how you do it. Don't use a knife. You'll be sorry. All right, my official taste tester is home from school, and you can see how the English muffin toasted up beautifully. We put a little light butter on it. There's some homemade freezer strawberry jam. Prepper A, why don't you go ahead and do the honors? Have the first bite. See what you think. How is it?
It is so good.
It's so good. Well, don't cry. It tastes good to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything that needs to be improved on, or you think it's just perfect recipe?
Oh, it's perfect.
Awesome. Okay, well, there you have it. 10-year-old, they don't lie, I'm telling you. Yep. Oh, that does look delicious. All right, please try this. It's so easy. No reason to pay for those expensive bakery English muffins. You can make your own. You know what goes in them. There's no preservatives. I do store, for our family of 3, we leave about half of them out. We put them in a container in the refrigerator, and then I freeze the rest of them. They freeze beautifully. Just take them out the night before you want to use them. And if you really love English muffins, I can show you how to make the best Eggs Benedict ever at some point. Take care, everybody. Katzcradul.